Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts.
There are many times the Gardaí intervene to stop shooting attempts, and some of them are more serious than others. But yesterday, a huge amount of Gardaí, something like 300, were involved in an operation to stop, I suppose, what's a highly professional hit attempt in Clondalkin. What do we know so far about that hit attempt?
So basically, members of the emergency response unit, they stopped a car on Rolla Avenue in Clondalkin on Tuesday night, and they took a semi-automatic Glock pistol and ammunition from the car. There were 2 men in the car at the time and they were arrested. They've been held under organised crime legislation, so they can be held. It's called Section 50 of that act. They can be held for 7 days. And then there was a load of follow-up searches following on from this. They also seized phones and they seized other instruments from the men, including passports. Cocaine has been found. So there's been various different follow-ups, but the original action, I suppose, was when the Gardaí swooped on this car on Tuesday night. So
the guards, I suppose, always give it in the most simple forms. They say this is an intelligence-led operation. But what we do know, or what we believe at least, is that the target was an associate of a guy called Cormac Berkeley. Cormac Berkeley was shot dead in 2022. Berkeley was involved in the drugs trade. He is believed to have owed a large drug debt to a gang known as the Family, or what, it could be broadly considered the Family organisation. And we believe this hit attempt was targeting another associate of Berkeley's in basically over the same drug set.
Yes, exactly. So this, it's involving drugs in the West Dublin area, and there's been a lot of follow-up since this original action on Tuesday night. And as part of that, there was 18 searches. 2 were carried out on Portlaoise. And obviously there was a dangerous criminal by the name of Charles McClean. His cell was searched as part of this. So Charles McClean has been described many times as a central figure in drug dealing in West Dublin. So obviously this is all related to that, and to drug dealing in that area.
I stand to be corrected, but I can't think of anybody else who's been convicted in relation to 3 gangland murders. Oh. Charles McClean was, he has been served sentences, none of them for murder, but all as part of these murder investigations in 3 cases. The murder of Mark the Guinea Pig Desmond, very, very notorious criminal involved in the drugs trade in West Dublin for 2 decades, probably one of the most feared criminal figures of his generation. McClean is also serving a sentence for in relation to the murder of Thomas McCarthy. A guy was just convicted last week of the same offence. Thomas McCarthy's murder is one that it's never been fully clear what his motive was. Thomas McCarthy was not involved in organised crime. It was a grandfather. It's just simply not known. But Charles McClean was, the court had heard that he had given the nod to the killer to carry that out. And he's also serving a sentence for, I suppose it's a botched killing of a guy called Wayne Whelan. And Wayne Whelan was a very serious criminal, although all of these guys probably weren't in the headlines during their lifetime.
Yeah, well, I suppose Wayne Whelan and Guinea Pig Desmond in particular were really heavily involved in drug dealing in West Dublin, and they would have been, as you said, maybe not known to the media as much as others, but heavily involved. And Charles McClean seems to have been the guy who was kind of facilitating things for these criminals over the years, and because of these different killings has since come to massive prominence, and we've referred to him as a hitman, but essentially he had a car dealing business with Wayne Whelan, and he was involved in, he was originally charged with the murder of Mark Guinea Pig Desmond in 2016, and only earlier this year he put in a guilty plea for apprehending another person who was involved in the murder of Mark Desmond. So basically he ran into a house and he took a phone, and apparently in Garda interviews Charles McClean said that he got rid of the phone on the request of Wayne Whelan, who we know was later murdered, as you said. So they're all very interlinked and very well known to each other. But I guess Charles McClean has been described, Ken Foy previously has described him as basically a turncoat criminal, because he was obviously a pal and a criminal associate of guinea pig Desmond. He was later arrested along with Wayne Whelan on suspicion of the guinea pig's murder. He obviously put in that guilty plea earlier this year to apprehending another criminal involved. But then 2019, he was involved in conspiracy to murder Wayne Whelan. Wayne Whelan didn't die in this attempt. He was shot several times. Charles McClean was later stopped by Gardaí in one of the getaway cars. And then months later, Wayne Whelan was shot dead in a different crime. But I don't know if you remember the photo that went around Wayne Whelan sitting up in hospital with bullet holes in his face after being shot in this attempt that Charles McClean was done for. So he was, heavily involved. And then later on, then in 2020, the really strange murder of Thomas McCarthy, a completely innocent father of 5. He's a grandfather. He actually was living in England and returned to his mother's house, and he was shot several times. So Charles McClean pleaded guilty to helping a criminal gang murder him. So he hasn't actually, been done for murder, but he was originally charged with murder in some of these cases and entered, pleas to lesser offences. So as judges have pointed out when they're sentencing him, like, this guy, is a really centrally involved in drug dealing in that area and is a dangerous criminal. And they actually took the unusual step to give him consecutive sentences in all 3 offences. Often they'll give somebody a concurrent sentence, so you serve it at the same time as something else as another sentence. But in this case, he was given a total of 20 years for all 3 crimes.
Yeah, because, Charles McClean and Mark Desmond and Wayne Whelan were all friends. Mark Desmond had lived with Wayne Whelan. They, ultimately had grown up together. They shared a home. But what happened with them all was that Wayne Whelan had effectively sought to take out Mark Desmond for what we don't really know, but they remained in contact even up until they were started to shoot each other. Another guy, a guy called David Chen Lynch, who was suspected of money laundering for the gang, was also shot dead. So it was this incredible fallout. Though these were a separate sort of organised crime gang who dealt drugs, who laundered their money, and who controlled large patches of territory out there. They certainly dealt with the Kinahans in a very direct way, but they also had dealings with what the gang known as the family. These criminal structures, they're not obliged to only deal with the family or the Kinahans. They'll deal with whoever has drugs available. Now, the family continued to be, I suppose, with the demise of the Kinahans, they're regarded as being the number one target for the Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau in this state.
Yeah.
And they are being mentioned in connection with this hit attempt. Again, like the family have broadly not committed a lot of murders. Certainly the murder of Cormac Berkeley was believed to be driven or carried out by somebody or ordered by somebody very close to them, though whether they stay one step away from it is another matter.
Yeah.
But the fact that Charles McClean's cell is being raided by Gardaí, shows that at least there must be a suspicion that some of this crime is being directed from behind bars, which is not unheard of.
No, of course not. And as we've said, he's centrally involved in drug dealing in the Dublin area and has obviously built up a lot of enemies and a lot of associates throughout the years. Just to even try and describe the links between himself and Mark Desmond and Wayne Whelan, it's probably confusing because he essentially turned on the guinea pig Desmond and then later turned on Wayne Whelan, and both have been murdered. So yeah, he's a big part of this investigation, and obviously remains to be seen if they're going to arrest him. But he's obviously got a major role to play still in the drug dealing trade in Dublin, even though he's behind bars.
Yeah, and the fact that 300 Gardaí were involved, we had I suppose it shows that this is operating on a high and organised level. And the guards are bringing in that number of people because they know they're dealing with sort of serious professional people.
Yeah.
They obviously had an horrific attempt on the life of a guy in Finglas this week. A guy called Jeff Keating, who I suppose has become famous because of he worked for Rihanna. But you can see, even according to Mr. Keating, who spoke directly to Pat O'Connell for the Sunday World, it was an amateurish attempt with a sort of a shotgun from 30 yards away.
Yeah.
Look, nonetheless, absolutely frightening and terrifying, and could have killed him. But, you know, this is the kind of the other level of organised crime, I think, with these guys.
Yeah, and I suppose it's kind of been touched on before with the Kinahans that, you know, a lot of the, I don't know, for want of a better word, reliable hitman have either been killed or are locked up. So, like, you know, are they becoming desperate and they're relying on people that, you know, that maybe aren't capable of what they're being asked of. And we saw that yesterday, as you said, with the Jeff Keating attempt. We saw the pictures of the bullet holes in the back of his head. And like he said, a doctor had told him that he was lucky that the cartridges, he believes they were wet or something like that, because they didn't have, you know, like from the distance that they were shot at as well. They didn't have explosive power, and he was released from hospital on the same day. But yeah, it does show the reckless nature of criminals at the moment and the volatility that is out there, I guess.
But some of these criminals operating in this case that are suspected of being involved in this foiled hit are of the other level. I mean, they are highly organised, extremely well resourced, and are operating under the radar in a way. I mean, Cormac Berkeley's murder was extremely well planned, and it's certainly suspected that this is the same people again. Look, no doubt we'll hear more about this as the days go on, but another successful job from the Gardaí, and they really have had in terms of gangland murders this year, the numbers are so much lower, and, you know, it's a great success to be able to carry out an operation like this, you know, at this time.
Of course, yeah. And, you know, they obviously did save somebody's life, because the level of organisation was seen in what was seized from the car. Like, there's petrol canisters, there was masks seized from the car. There's obviously a man in his 40s and a man in his 30s in custody as well. So, you know, this was as you said, very serious operation, and somebody has them to thank tonight, I guess.
Yes, indeed they do.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to it, Eimear, over the next couple of days, no doubt.
Thanks, Niall.
Thanks.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.